Hello and welcome to the Musical Instrument Investigator. Today we are on the website of Brompton's auctioneers based in the UK, and we're going to have a look at their latest sale, which is the March Fine Sale. This is live now, and it's been open to bidding from the 18th of March. It's now the 25th today, so there's a few days left to go. It's due to finish on the 28th of March. This is their kind of high tier kind of sale. They do more general ones as well, but this is the one which has some of the kind of the finer instruments in. Now if we have a look at the catalogue, we'll see that there's actually quite a lot of items for this particular auction, about 250, so we'll do our best to kind of go, or 260 even, so wow, quite a lot. So we'll do our best to kind of get through all of these as quickly as possible, obviously because there's so many and we don't really want the kind of video to go on for hours and hours, because I think people will probably get quite bored. We will just have to try and go through some lots very briefly. I do like to go through and show at least some of the pictures of some of the lots just for reference sake, because for me I quite like to look back at some of these videos, and it's actually been useful to me. I've certainly looked back at a few of the images and things on my own videos and thought, you know, this is actually quite interesting when I've on reflection had thoughts about violins or bows, and I've been able to look back. So I do try and view as many pictures as possible, but time constraints obviously. So as per usual, just say that this sale is based in the UK, so check all your terms and conditions if you are, well, if you're in the UK, but if you're outside, if you're in Europe, if you're international, import export fees, etc., you'll see all the explanations here, lots of resources, etc., etc. As per normal with Brompton, same deal as Terezio. Your buyer's premium, that's the percentage you pay on top of the final hammer price, is 20% as standard, but if you're the first person to bid and then you're the person that ends up winning it, then actually you save 2% off that. And although that doesn't sound like very much, if you're kind of buying an expensive item like £20,000 or something like that, then actually 2% off the additional fees is, you know, is not small change. So it's definitely worth bearing that in mind. So without further ado, based on the fact that we actually have quite a crazy amount of things to look through, let's just kind of get on, and I'll do my best to whiz through while still trying to capture some interesting information. So let's hope that the internet is working today. So we have a fine French silver mounted violin bow by Joseph Henri, so estimates 28 to 32,000, so it's a very high end. It's a round stick, unstamped, sold with a certificate of Bernard Millant, Paris 2006, weight 36 grams. So it says stick very good, handle with some wear, frog good but with some cracks and repairs. We can have a look at some images here. So obviously to have a Millant certificate is very good indeed. What we might do is just zoom out a little bit, because it's just not quite loading everything all on one screen. So this I think is a little bit better. No bids so far, so interesting bow there. And we have an English silver mounted violin bow by John Dodd, 2 to 3,000 is the estimate. No bids on that so far. Some good pictures. And a French silver mounted violin bow, probably workshop of Dominique Pacat, 1200 to 1800. 3 bids on that. 1200, we're at the kind of low end of the estimate already. And a French nickel mounted violin bow by Charles Louis Bazin, 1200 to 1800. Starting bid 1000, so no bids yet. I will put a link to this auction in the description so that you can check it out yourself. Sold a certificate of West Country Violins Devon 2022. A Swiss silver mounted violin bow by Johannes Finkel, 1000 to 1500 is the estimate there. 65 grams, it's slightly heavy. 1 bid on that. And a French silver mounted violin bow by the workshop of JTL 8 to 1200. There's a bid of 700 on that already. Pierre Guillaume certificate there. It's always good to have as well. A French nickel mounted violin bow by Jean-Joseph Martin, circa 1870, 2 to 3000. Certificate of Salcho and Sons. There, 1800 is the current bid. You can see condition reports here. Stick good, though in need of much straightening. Head has a coating of non-original varnish, which may be covering a condition issue. Frog good. So, some potential issues there, so always good to read all this stuff and obviously look at it in person if you can. An English silver mounted violin bow by Michael Taylor, 12 to 1500. It's the estimate, no bids so far. An English silver mounted violin bow by W.E. Hills and Sons, 1000 to 1500. Good throughout, head with repaired crack to cheek on audience side, handle obscured by skin of leather. Okay. French silver mounted violin bow by Claude Joseph Fonclause, 4 to 6 is the estimate. We've got a bid of 1000. Very good throughout, but camber in need of attention. It's interesting that they're commenting on that. I've not really observed so many comments about kind of what work is required so much. Maybe I haven't been paying attention, but it's interesting to see these comments. French silver mounted violin bow by Jacques Ordonneau. Got another Guillaume certificate there, really. So that's good. No bids on that so far. An English silver mounted violin bow by Michael Taylor for Ealing Strings. So we saw another Michael Taylor bow earlier. One bid on that, so 1000. Very good condition. French nickel mounted violin bow by Francois Lot, 800 to 1200 there. No bids on that so far. Another very good. And a fine French silver mounted violin bow by Nicolas Simon, 15,000 to 20,000, so in the high end. Another one with a Bernard Millant certificate in very good condition. French silver mounted violin bow by Alfred Lamy Père, 12 to 15,000. Sale receipt from J&A Beer, 1982. Interesting. A French nickel mounted violin bow by Nicolas Maire, 10 to 15,000 is the estimate. No bids so far. Jean-Francois Raffin certificate there. So you really want to see a Raffin or a Guillaume certificate for kind of makers that are still alive. Obviously a Millant certificate is very nice as well. A French silver mounted violin bow by Joseph Vorin, 2 to 3,000 is the estimate. Oh, this is popular. 11 bids already. There you go, your Pierre Guillaume certificate as standard. French silver mounted violin bow by Emile Francois Houchard. Working on my French pronunciations there. 4 bids so far. A French silver mounted violin bow by Emile Auguste Houchard, again 1500 to 2000. Number of bids 2. Certificate from Raffin. Speaking here, pinned head, otherwise very good throughout. This lot contains an ivory faceplate which is subject to restrictions regarding import or export. So, as I've always said to people, you've got to be very careful with bows that have ivory, tortoiseshell. It's just a real pain to deal with. I still say just avoid it. If you any bow that has tortoiseshell, ivory, just unless you're willing to change it, you know, change your frog, change your faceplate. And if you're a touring musician, it's just a pain for you to do that. If you're just going to stay in one country, if you're going to stay in the UK, fine, but otherwise I just don't think it's worth it, really. My personal opinion, which I'm sure most people disagree with, but I'll say it anyway. A French silver mounted violin bow by Francois Lot, 1200 to 1800 there. Stamped M. Doris, 1100 current bid. Another Pierre Guillaume certificate there. I actually like the layout of Brompton's auctions. It kind of makes me feel a bit more kind of comfortable, I think. A Swiss silver mounted violin bow by Siegfried Finkel. There you go. A very fine French gold and tortoiseshell mounted violin bow by Andre Vigneron, 15 to 20,000. I mean, it's a nice looking bow, 62 grams, very good throughout. But, you know, tortoiseshell, I don't know. French silver mounted violin bow by Alfred Lamy, 5 to 6,000. No bids on that. Our good old Guillaume certificate. French silver mounted violin bow by Eugene Cugno-Huri. Looks interesting. Stick good, but very minor damage to head at point. Frog good, but open crack to thumb protection. Damage to the underside. Slide even. Okay. French silver mounted violin bow, School of Bazar. Stamped taut. Interesting wood choice there. Condition report is available on request. I think I would definitely request a condition report for that bow. One bid, reserve not met. Okay, a French nickel mounted violin bow by Prosper Colas, 1200 to 1800. Another Raffin certificate there. A German silver mounted violin bow. No bids. Silver mounted violin bow. A French nickel mounted violin bow by Francois Lot. Another Raffin certificate there. English silver mounted violin bow, probably workshop of W.E. Hills and Sons. Stamped heart. 800 to 1,000. So starting bid 700, no bid so far. An English gold and tortoiseshell mounted violin bow by W.E. Hills and Sons, 6 to 8,000. Starting bid 5,000. So this is pretty much the high end of the hill bows as far as I'm aware. The basically gold mounted with the tortoiseshell and fleur-de-lis. I think, I'm not sure that there was a higher model than that. I'm sure someone will argue otherwise, but I think that's the highest level of bow that they did. A French silver mounted violin bow by Charles Nicolas Bazar, 3 to 5,000. 2 bids on that so far. Raffin certificate. French violin bow by Auguste Lenoble, 2.5 to 3,500 there. Guillaume certificate. A good silver mounted violin bow attributed to Alfred Lamy, 12 to 1,800. There is the estimate. And a French gold mounted violin bow by Didier Claudel, 1,000 to 1,500. 6 bids on that so far. A French silver mounted violin bow, no unstamped there. 700 is the starting bid estimate. 800 to 1,200. French silver mounted violin bow by Marc Lebert. No bids on that so far. French silver mounted violin bow by Emile Auguste and Emile Francois Houchard with a Raffin certificate there. 8 to 12,000. No bids so far. Seems in good condition. A good French silver mounted violin bow by Emile Francois Houchard. No bids on this so far. It's got the ivory faceplate. I mean, that was completely standard, of course, so it makes sense. French silver mounted violin bow by Charles Nicolas Bazar. 8 bids on that one so far. Very good throughout. German silver mounted violin bow by Otto Derschmidt. No bids on that. French silver mounted violin bow by Eugene Sartori, 6 to 10,000. No bids on that so far. Significant break and repair to the player side of the head. Repaired break to stick, handle with considerable wear, frog with considerable wear, and crack to thumb protection. Button possibly later. It'd be interesting to see if this sells or not, because obviously Sartori bow is extremely desirable, and if repaired well, then a bow can perform, you know, as well as it did when it wasn't damaged. So it's be interesting to see what the market value is for something like this. For a long time, people have been saying that, you know, bows with damage are kind of hardly worth anything. But I think people are now starting to realise that actually, you know, if a fine bow is broken, there's still quite a lot of value in it as a playing kind of artifact. So yeah, interesting. Be interesting to see how that sells. French nickel mounted violin bow by Louis Morizon Frère. No bids on that so far. Another West Country violin certificate. French nickel mounted violin bow by Joseph Martin. One bid on that of 2000, and it's got a Guillaume certificate. French nickel mounted violin bow by Louis Morizon Frère. No bids so far. And a French silver mounted violin bow by Charles Nicolas Bazin. 3 to 5. No bids so far, and we obviously have a Raffin certificate there. French nickel mounted violin bow by Eugene Cugnot-Hury. Raffin certificate, and no bids so far. Internet is slow today. Okay, we're on to instruments now, thankfully. A very interesting violin, probably Italian, first half of the 19th century. 15,000 to 20,000 is the estimate. Scroll possibly later, labelled Johannes Franciscus Presender. Length of back 352, so that's kind of quite good. So interesting looking thing. Curious enough, and see what the sound post crack will, but it's patched. A few other kind of cracks. Doesn't state if they're open or closed, but in any case, interesting enough. Interesting being Brompton's favourite description. An Italian violin by Pietro Paolo Desideri, Ascoli Piceno, 1793. Estimate 6 to 8. Current bid 5,500. 355 is the length of the back. A very interesting scroll, actually. I quite like that. That's nice. Very nice. Interesting looking violin. That's definitely quite cool. Yeah, I like that. It's a very nice scroll. I'm not familiar with this maker, I must admit. Violin attributed to Vincenzo Panormo, possibly Paris, circa 1785. 2 bids on that at 4,000. Length of back 359. It's an interesting looking violin. Nice, quite a nice varnish on the front anyway. Something very funny going on there with the button. That's a bit concerning. Worm damage in back, it's saying. So that's interesting. French violin by Jenny Bailey, Paris circa 1940. Got 2 bids of 1,600 on that. Let's see, 359 length of back. An English violin by Mars Doubleday for Ealing Strings, London, 1995. No bids on that. We're looking at estimates 1,000 to 1,500. This looks in pretty good condition, actually. Yeah, good condition. So that's English violin. An Italian violin by Annibale Fagnola, Turin, 1929, after G.B. Guadagnini. Estimates 80 to 100,000. No bids on that so far. We've got a video that you can watch, but I'm not going to play it at the moment. 354 length of back. That's good. Robust scroll. Interesting. Let's see what condition report says. Possible kind of open or repaired crack on the centre join, something like that. Not very helpful, these visual condition reports of Bromptons, but in any case, it's better than nothing, I guess. An Italian violin by Joseph Paluzi, Turin, 1926, 15 to 20 is the estimate. Length of back 355. Another kind of curious looking violin there. I think Bromptons have pulled out quite a number of interesting items. A few little cracks there. It doesn't look too bad. Footnotes: Paluzi used an old pre-printed label in his violin, neglecting to strike through the 18 and amend with 19, thus explaining the discrepancy between label date and date of manufacture. Interesting. A Bohemian Violin by Johann Georg Lieb, Pressburg, 1783. It's quite a cool scroll. 4 to 6 is the estimate. There's no bids on that so far. A good and interesting violin, probably second half of the 18th century. That's a cool scroll. I quite like that. 359 length of back, getting on the longer side. Soundpost cracking table, but it's patched, so that's at least one thing. An Italian violin by Stefano Cognac, Cremona 2021. 5 to 8,000 the estimate, no bids so far, and you get a certificate from the maker there. So that's useful. A German violin, School of Klotz, Mittenwald, circa 1770, 3 to 5,000 is the estimate. Interesting back. Very curious. An Italian violin attributed to and probably by Alfonso della Corte, Naples, 1863, 20 to 30,000 is the estimate. There's no bids so far. Nice crackulature on the varnish there. So a lot of makers try and emulate that kind of stuff. So a few cracks. Soundpost, looks like there's a patch there. So good to bear that in mind. An Italian violin by Massimo Negroni, Cremona 2021, with a certificate of the maker. There was quite a few modern Italians in the Brompton's auctions. An Italian violin by Luigi Akoli, Pistoria 2019. 355 length the back. What's interesting is that we saw an Akoli violin for sale at the Turin auction that we did recently, and also I believe there is one for sale at Ingalls and Heyday, so I'm not 100% sure what's kind of going on here, and I think we've seen lots of these violins by this maker before in other auctions, so not entirely sure what's occurring. It's an interesting looking violin. It looks like well made. I'm just a bit curious about this choice of woods, the kind of contrast between the two figures, but yeah, curious enough. A French violin by Charles J.B. Colomazar, 1912, 4 bids on that. These are really popular at the moment. These Colomazars and also the J.B. Collar violins are always kind of popular. Italian violin by Dario Aguzzi, Vidigolfo, 2016, 1 bid on that, 1800. 356 length of back, and you get a certificate from the maker as well, so that's also useful. Violin probably Mircor, circa 1830, quite a long back, 362. Definitely kind of curious. In any case, so 1800 to 2200, no bids on that thus far. It's definitely curious. An Italian violin by Giuseppe Lucci, Rome, 1972, 3 bids on that, so we're on 15,000 already. So that's going well so far. 355 is the length of the back. You've got a certificate of the maker and also one from Rodolfo Marchini. German violin by Joseph Klotz, Mittenwald, 1794. No bids on that so far. Length of back 352. Some worm damage there. An Italian violin by Riccardo Bergonzi, Cremona 2006. Number of bids 3. Certificate of the maker again. So we see actually Bergonzi, these Riccardo Bergonzi violins in a few auctions. A French violin, Mirko, circa 1820, one bid on that for 1800. 362 is the length of the back. Bohemian Violin by Joseph Antonin Cermak, Kutnahora, 1910. No bids on that so far. Italian violin, Circle of Revolta, first half of the 19th century, 10 to 15,000 is the estimate. We've got a bid of 9,000. It's had a lot of work done. Good patch there as well. Interesting. An Italian violin, possibly by Dante and Alfredo Gustala, Reggio Emilia, 1925. One bid on that, 4,500. It looks quite long, yeah, 359, so it's fairly big. An Italian violin by Raphael Callis, Naples, 1918. Two bids on that so far, 359. Interesting scroll. Quite like this eye, it's quite strong. Violin, Tyrol, circa 1750. No bids on that so far. 3 to 5,000 is the estimate there. And moving on, when the internet decides that it wants to play games. A violin attributed to Eugenio Sidersi, Florence, 1949. No bids on that so far. A French violin, workshop of JTL, Mirko, 1890. No bids so far. Probably the least exciting violin in the auction at the moment. An Italian violin by Rodolfo Marchini, Rome, 1984. Current bid 1,000. We saw a certificate by him from a few years ago, a few lots before. Looks in good condition as per what it says. A French violin by René Bailly, Mirko, 1925. No bids on that so far. French violin, probably Mirko, second half of the 19th century. German violin, probably Mittenwald, circa 1780. No bids on that. French violin by Gustave Villaume, Nancy, 1947. 5 bids on that. We're up to £1,700 on that. An Italian violin by Olvino Domini, Rome, 1983. No bids so far. Certificate from the maker. And a French violin, workshop of Caressa and Francais, Paris, 1908. 3 bids on that. 359 is the length of back. Looks in very good condition. A violin attributed to Ennio Perotti, circa 1950. No bids on this so far. An Italian violin by Gaetano and Mario Garda, circa 1950. 18 to 25,000 is the estimate. Comes with certificate of the maker. Not sure there's too much going on with that. An Italian violin, possibly workshop of Scarampella. No bids on that so far. 6 to 10,000 is the estimate. And a French violin by Charles J.B. Colomazar, pair. 14 bids on that, 3,500. Like I said, these are very popular for a certain level of player or kind of student. A French violin, probably by a member of the Remy family, Paris or Mirecourt, circa 1840. That looks quite long. 362, yeah, that's a sizable instrument. No bids on that. An Italian violin by Giovanni Paulo Maggini, Brescia, circa 1600. So this is a very interesting violin, very early violin, but obviously one of the kind of most famous violin makers. But it does show you that there are certain instruments that, despite their kind of importance, don't go for crazy money. 60 to 70,000 on the estimate. It's not too unreasonable. Starting bid 55. So the outline of the violin may have been slightly modified in the past, so that's kind of interesting. Also, because it seems 359 is not too bad a length. Certificate of Peter Bidoff from 2018. It's had some work there. The outline of the violin may have been slightly modified in the past, so some questionable things kind of going on there. But nevertheless, this is an interesting violin to see at auction. Italian violin circa 1750, 6 to 10,000 is the estimate. 355, repairs to table ribs, back soundpost crack in table with patch. I love the positioning here of the F-holes. It's very curious, and a curious kind of scroll as well. So a very interesting violin, that for sure. A French violin attributed to Charles Galliard, Paris 1857. No bids on this so far. A German violin attributed to and possibly by Simpertus Nigel Fussen, circa 1760. One bid there, 2,600. I do wonder if we've seen this violin before in one of the previous auctions. I do think that we might have seen it before, but I could be wrong. A fine Italian violin by Antonius and Hieronymus Amati, Cremona, circa 1826. One bid there. Well, and it was 70,000, so another important violin. Very cool scroll there. It's an interesting looking instrument. Curious to see the condition report. This is very small. 345. It's very small indeed. Later scroll probably by Michael Decanet, so that's interesting. Sold a certificate of Jacques Français, New York. Yeah. Let's have a look at the diagram here. Yeah, lots of kind of work around the F-holes, cracks, patches. So definitely an interesting one. 80 to 120,000 is the estimate. A fine and interesting Italian violin, possibly by Gaetano Ancionazzi, second half of the 19th century. No bid so far. 40 to 60,000 is the estimate there. Sold with a bill of sale from Johannes Stubiger, Vienna, 1918. Addressed to Professor M. Goldis of Vienna, in which the above violin is described as being by Tommaso Ballesteri of Mantua, original in all its parts. The violin is accompanied by another letter by Alfred Coletti, Vienna, 1920, who also confirmed that the violin was made by Tommaso Ballesteri. Interesting. Length of the back 355. The violin was property of a Captain Bernström of Stockholm, who presumably purchased it from the Goldists and was the chairman of the Royal Opera in Stockholm in the 1920s. Bernström was a great violin enthusiast and possessed a large collection, including a Stradivari purchased through W.E. Hills and Sons in London. So, yeah. I mean, it's a curious looking instrument that doesn't seem to look like any kind of Ballesteri, but definitely unusual. There's some of the documents there. Very strange. A French nickel mounted viola bow by Charles Nicolas Bazin, 1 bid, 4,500. There, with a Raffin certificate. Swiss silver mounted viola bow by Johannes Finkel. No bids so far. A German viola bow by Lothar Seifert. 1 bid. An English gold mounted viola bow by Garner Wilson. French nickel mounted viola bow workshop of Louis Morizon Frère. An interesting silver mounted violin or viola bow, possibly French, 64 grams. It's kind of in between. It's either a very heavy violin bow or a light viola bow. So it's curious. Good English silver mounted viola bow by Malcolm Taylor. A French silver mounted viola bow by Charles Louis Bouthold. 3 bids on that. The X Primrose X Molnar, an Italian viola attributed to Giovanni Ruggiani, Brescia, circa 1600. 1 bid on that on 18,000. 20 to 30 is the estimate. Length the back 407, that's a good size. Interesting looking instrument there. Curious scroll. Let's have a look at here. That's a big kind of patch on the back there, and on the front. But I mean, given its age, I guess it makes sense. Italian scroll possibly by another hand. Sound dials have been altered, and the perfect seems to be a later addition. It's possible that Viola has been reduced in size. Viola has belonged to the same family since 1950, when it was purchased by the present owner from her teacher, Mr. Ferenc Molnar, who in turn had purchased it from William Primrose. The Hungarian violinist Ferenc Molnar was a founding member of the Roth Quartet based in Paris. Later emigrated to the US during the Second World War. There you go, interesting. Bit of history there. A fine German viola by a member of the Klotz family, probably Joseph Mittenwald, circa 1760. No bid so far. 8,000 to 12,000 is the estimate. 397 is the length of the back, so a little bit kind of smaller than your average, I guess, for current trends, but otherwise. An English viola by Charles and Samuel Thompson, London 1786, no bids so far. 4 to 6,000, length about 387, that is quite small. It's a nice looking instrument now. I'm a big fan of English instruments. You know, unless it's the cellos, I don't really get that much appreciation other than a few specific makers, but I'm a fan. An English viola by Glenn Collins, London 1972, no bids on that so far. 427, well, we've gone the opposite way now. We've gone to super giant size. That is a big viola, without a shadow of a doubt. An Italian viola by Enrico Marchetti, Turin, 1926. 5 bids on that, 35,000. So we've hit the bottom estimate. In a fine state of preservation, 401 is the back size. That's a pretty good size. This is an interesting one. Few kind of repairs there. You can listen to the videos as well. An Italian viola by Alfredo Gianotti, Milan 1974. 0 bids so far. 421. That's quite big still. Interesting back. English viola, workshop of Bet, circa 1800. No bids on that. 12 to 18,000 is the estimate. Length back 388, that's quite small again. A very cool kind of pattern at the back, that's quite good. That's an interesting viola. An English viola by Charles John Wilkinson, London circa 1930. 0 bids on that. 7 to 10,000 is the estimate. It's quite a cool scroll. 415, that's a good, fairly good size on the upper level. An English viola by Clifford Hoying, Buckinghamshire, 1956, 2 bids on that. 412, length the back. It's pretty good. Original receipt there from the maker. An Italian viola by Giuseppe Ferrari, Rome, 1948, no bids on that so far. Length the back 419. An English viola by Ian Highfield, Rednall, 1994. We got 1 bid of 1200 on that. Length the back 406, which I think is a good size. An English viola by Joseph Hill, London, circa 1770. 0 bids on that. 6 to 10 is the estimate. Wow, that is very, very small. 379. That is pretty small. Yeah, definitely very, very small indeed. An English classical viola by George Stoppani, Manchester, 1991. 1 bid on that. 411 is the bid. French viola, circa 1930. 2 bids on that. Viola d'Amore by Johannes Ulricus Eberle, Prague, 1759. Wow, 3 bids on that of 7,000. I'm kind of impressed. 7 to 10,000. Yeah, interesting. One of the most horrific heads I've ever seen personally. I think it's really, really horrible. But still an interesting instrument. Looks like it's had quite a lot of work done to it. Sound post cracking back, stuff on ribs, back, peg box, so definitely a curious one. Not my type of thing, but there you go. French silver mounted cello by Etienne Pajot, 15 to 20,000 is the estimate. No bids so far. Raffin certificate there. An English silver mounted cello by Michael Taylor for Ealing Strings. No bids on that. Good silver mounted cello attributed to and probably by Albert Fleury. Number of bids 2. An English gold mounted cello by J.E. Vickers. Interesting. 800 to 1200. 1 bid of that was 700. A German gold mounted cello by H.R. Frechner. 4 to 5,000. We've got 1 bid of 3.5 on that. An English silver mounted cello probably by James Dodd. No bids on that so far. French silver mounted cello probably workshop of Charles Bazin. No bids on that so far. French silver mounted cello attributed to Louis Morizon Frère. French silver mounted cello possibly by Jean-Joseph Martin. 2 bids on that of 800. French silver mounted cello workshop of Paul Jambard. French silver mounted cello by Eugene Cugnot-Uri. German silver mounted cello there. German silver mounted cello again. French silver mounted cello by Alfred Lamy. English silver mounted cello by John Clutterbuck. No bids on that one so far. Good French silver mounted cello. No bids on that. Not so many bids on cello bows at the moment. An English silver-mounted split cane cello bow by Lawrence Cocker. Interesting. No bids on that. German silver-mounted cello bow. No bids so far. Some actual cellos. A good French cello by Charles J.B. Colomazar. 1912. One bid. There you go. Cello's popular as well. 18 to 20,000. Sold with a reproduction of the Colomazar workshop sales catalogue. Curious. A cello by Dario Aguzzi, Vidagolfo, 2016. 0 bids on that. 6 to 8,000 is the estimate. Cello probably German, second half of the 19th century. No bids on that. An interesting Italian cello attributed to Pietro Grulli, Cremona, 1877. 2 bids on that. Fine English cello by Joseph Hill, London, circa 1770. 4 bids on that. 38,000 we're on. So, certificate from J&A Beer, 1978. It's had some work. Oh look, it's the first time we've seen an annotation for a while on Brompton's sheet, so that's curious. English cello by John Morrison, London, 1815. 10 to 15,000 is the estimate. No bids so far. French cello by a member of the Cognac family, Neufchâteau, circa 1860. 4 bids on that. 8.5. It's interesting, these Calcin school instruments, cello, violin, viola, whatever, always have a popular following. English cello by Thomas Dodd, London, circa 1820. After Amati. No bids on that so far. 35 to 45,000 is the estimate. I quite like that. It's quite nice. Sold with documents including receipt of purchase. An English cello, probably by Thomas Kennedy, circa 1810. No bids on that so far. 10 to 15,000 is the estimate. It's had a bit of work done to that. German cello by Karl Bitterer, Mittenwald, second half of the 20th century. No bids on that so far. French cello by Georges Chanot I, Paris, 1870. 1 bid on that. 35. That might be quite popular. Interesting, the Chanot family. Hill certificate on that. A German cello by Matthias Neuner, Mittenwald, 1843. No bids on that so far. German cello by Eduard Riedel, circa 1900. 5 bids on that. An Italian tenor viol by Luigi Vistoli, Venice, 1959. 2 bids on that. Curious instrument. It's good to see something a bit different. Burr walnut shaped violin case by Hart and Sons. 1 bid on that for £1,000. Okay, interesting. Must be a rare one. French silver mounted violin bow by Benoit Roland. 1 bid on that. 6,000. A good golden tortoiseshell mounted violin bow, possibly French. 2 bids on that so far. German gold mounted violin bow by Albert Nürnberger. 2 bids on that. French nickel mounted violin bow by Charles Nicolas Bazar, with our good friend Mr. Raffin on certificate duties. French nickel mounted violin bow by Morizon Frère. Another one with a Raffin certificate. Camber needs attention. French nickel mounted violin bow by Charles Louis Bazar. French silver mounted violin bow by Charles Nicolas Bazar. This is beginning to feel like a Vichy auction now, just tied to French things. German silver mounted violin bow by Albert Nürnberger there. One bid of that, 1800. An English silver mounted violin bow by W.E. Hill and Sons. No bids so far. German silver mounted violin bow by Albert Nürnberger. No bids so far. French nickel mounted violin bow by Morrison Frère with a Raffin certificate. French nickel mounted violin bow by Charles Pacat, 15 to 18,000 there. Certificate of Salcho and Sons. No bids so far. Good throughout. Stick needs attention to camber. Okay. French silver mounted violin bow by Alfred Lamy. 3 bids on that. 6,000, 6 to 10,000 is the estimate. That's a popular one. French silver mounted violin bow by Charles Nicolas Bazar again. No bids so far. French golden tortoiseshell mounted violin bow by Louis Morrison Frère. No bids on that. French nickel mounted violin bow by Morrison Frère. No bids. Got the old Raffin certificate there. A German gold mounted violin bow by Albert Nürnberger. 1 bid on that, 3.5. That's actually quite interesting. French nickel mounted violin bow by Charles Nicolas Bazar. With the Raffin certificate. French silver mounted picture violin bow, workshop of Pierre Hell. 3 bids on that, 1800. It's got the little image thing in it. French silver mounted violin bow by Jean-Joseph Martin after Viome. No bids on that so far. 7 to 10,000. A German silver mounted violin bow by Ludwig Bausch. Stuck there. English gold mounted violin bow by Percy Bryant. Okay, interesting. 2,000 to 3,000 is the estimate. This is not a name that I've come across as yet, so I have to be honest. French violin bow by Eugene Sartori, 7 to 10,000. 2 bids on that, 6.5. Guillaume certificate there. The Frog and Button by Hippolyte Camille Lamy. Interesting. French silver mounted violin bow by Benoit Roland. 2 bids so far. A German mounted violin bow, probably by H. H. Frechner. 1 bid on that. German silver mounted violin bow by a member of the Frechner family. 11 bids on that. Interesting. French nickel mounted violin bow, probably by Claude Joseph von Claus. 4 to 6,000 is the estimate there. 0 bids on that so far. French silver mounted violin bow by Brullier and Lot. German silver mounted violin bow by Albert Nürnberger. French silver mounted violin bow, probably by Pierre Simon. French nickel mounted violin bow, workshop of Etienne Pajot. No bids on that so far. French silver mounted violin bow by Charles Enel. 4 bids on that. English nickel mounted violin bow by W.E. Hills and Sons. No bids on that. French nickel mounted violin bow by Eugene Sartori. 5 bids on that. 2,000. Later handle, frog and button. Stick broken and repaired, new handle, grafted, frog good. That's interesting. So we're already up to £2,000. Be curious to see what that goes for as well. French nickel mounted violin bow by Claude Thomasar. No bids on that. It's got a broken head that's been repaired. German silver mounted violin bow by Albert Nürnberger. No bids on that so far. German nickel mounted violin bow after Vorin. No bids so far. An English gold mounted violin bow by Jan Kudanowski. Interesting. 2 to 3,000 is the estimate. No bids on that so far. I have to say that Jan Kudanowski is an extremely nice guy and one of the most interesting people that I've ever met in my life. So if you get a chance to meet Jan at all, I believe he teaches bow making, I think, in Cambridge on occasions. But if you manage to meet him anywhere, he is very, very interesting guy, very funny. So he's a really nice man for sure. But this is the first time I've seen one of his bows actually before. I think, in any case, a French nickel mounted violin bow by Charles Nicolas Bazin. One bid on that with a Raffin certificate. An English silver mounted violin bow by George Darby. No bids on that. I'm not aware of this maker either, so there's a few makers I've not heard of, I must be honest. An English silver mounted violin bow by a member of the Tubbs family, probably William. No bids on that so far. A German nickel mounted violin bow by Leopold Frechner. One bid on that. And we're on to violins again. A German violin, probably by Sebastian Klotz, Mittenwald, 1771. One bid on that. Length of back 364. That is pretty big. Violin's been in possession of the same French family since 1780. Wow. And the sale includes a letter from the current owners detailing the violin's history. That's interesting. Wow. That's a long time. An English violin by George Krask. Manchester, circa 1840. No bids on that so far. Make the back 360. All the Krask stuff is very interesting indeed. French violin by Amédée Dudouin, Mircourt, 1924. No bids on that so far. French violin by Jean-Baptiste Collin, Mircourt, 1926. No bids on that so far. I'm surprised. Yeah, that's a bit surprising. An Italian violin by Gaetano Scarabotto, Parma, 1927. Two bids of 48,000 on that. Not quite met the lower estimate yet, but still a few days left to go. Good condition. That's featured in the book about Scarabotto. Interesting. An Italian violin by David Chiron, Mariano Comenza, 1901. No bids on that. Violin School of Albani, Tyrol, circa 1720. Zero bids on that. 4 to 6,000. That's an interesting one. Bit of a brick repair there. An English violin, possibly by John Johnson, London, circa 1760. 3 bids on that. We're up to £1,000. Quite interesting scroll. An Italian violin by Vincenzo Postiglione, Naples, 1907. 1 bid on that. 13. 15 to 20 is the estimate. Length of back 356. Certificate of Rodolfo Marchini. An Italian violin by Alfredo Gianotti, Milan, 1981. No bids on that so far. A Spanish violin by Ramon Paramon, Barcelona, 1948. No bids on that so far. Good to see some Spanish work in here. Interesting scroll as well. Quite like it. And a violin circa 1850 with no bids on it so far. A violin after Guadagnini circa 1900, no bids on this one. An Italian violin by Joseph Paluzi, Turin 1924, 2 bids on that, 14,000. 356 is the length of the back. Okay. A good French violin, probably by Francois Cossin, Neufchâteau, circa 1860, 4 bids on that, 4,200. So, like I said, these Cossin school violins, always popular. German violin by C.G. Glier and Son, Mark Nickerkin, circa 1925. No bids on that so far. Interesting. That's quite a striking back there. Interesting violin, attributed to and probably by a member of the Stadelmann family, Vienna, circa 1800. No bids on that so far. An Italian violin by Paulo de Barbieri, Genoa 1924, 0 bids on that so far, 30 to 40,000 is the estimate. Length of back 357. See what's going on here. An Italian violin by Alfredo Gianotti, Milan 1978, 0 bids on that so far. A violin, probably Italian, first half of the 19th century, 0 bids on that. That looks pretty long. 357, that's not too bad. An English violin by George Craske, Manchester, circa 1850, 0 bids on that. Another interesting Craske violin. This one looks slightly more interesting than the other one, I think. A violin attributed to Lorenzo Bellafontana, Genoa 1947. 355 is the length of back. An Italian violin, circa 1880, 1 bid on that. An English violin by John Walker, Birmingham 1925, no bids so far. She looks fairly interesting. A German violin by Ernst Heinrich Roth, Mark de Kirkin 1935, 3 bids on that, 2,000. Always popular. These known quantity, I guess. A French violin by Charles Duran, Mircourt 1898, 4 bids on this. 358 is the length of the back. A rare Italian violin by Antonio Bagatella, Padua 1758, 4 bids on that, 42,000. 40 to 60 is the estimate. Length of the back 354, which is quite deceptive because it looks quite narrow. It's got a JNA beer certificate. It's had a few things, some post patch in the top there. An Italian violin, probably Venice, circa 1760, 1 bid on that, 5,000. German violin, attributed to and probably by Leopold Widom, Nuremberg 1778, 1 bid on that. Interesting, actually, varnish on the back. A violin made for Monzino and Sons, 3 bids on that, 2,000. German violin by Siegfried Petzold, Berlin 1937, 4 bids on that one. Interesting back. An Italian violin, workshop of Monzino, Milan, circa 1920. 2 bids on that. Cool scroll. Interesting strong fluting to the F-hole wings. German violin, attributed to George Klotz, Mittenwald, circa 1760. 2 bids on that. Up to 4,000 so far. Violin attributed to and probably by Raphael Callas, Naples, 1925. Fine Italian violin by Giuseppe Pedrezzini, Milan, 1919. 3 bids on that, up to 40, so it's 40 to 60 is the estimate. It's a strong scroll, strong lines on that. I quite like that. Quite like a deep kind of strong lines on a scroll. 358 is the length of the back. Interesting, retains its original neck. Italian violin by Luigi Cardi, Verona, 1874. No bids on this so far. 358 is the length of the back. I quite like that. A very interesting violin, probably Venice, second half of the 19th century. No bids on that so far. 357 is the length of the back. Interesting Italian violin, Milan, circa 1900, after Testore. There's 1 bid on that. 6,000. An Italian violin, Circle of Biziac, circa 1920. German violin, Mittenwald, circa 1750. No bids on that so far. This is an amazing scroll. Look how kind of thin it goes there and how big this kind of head is. Very interesting. Some repairs there. That's a curious looking scroll. Irish violin by Ben Conover, Bantry, 2011. That's a robust scroll as well. It's an interesting one. 355 length of back. Italian violin by Vincenzo Cennino, Naples, circa 1915. After Alessandro Galliano, 35 was the current bid, so it's at the lower end of the estimate. That's a cool scroll. That's a nice looking back. It's got a Gindin certificate from 2021. Violin attributed to Pietro Antonio Landolfi, Milan, circa 1780. Number of bids 2. Certificate of Moning and Son. An interesting Dutch violin, probably Amsterdam, circa 1680. 0 bids so far. That's definitely interesting. Repairs to table ribs and back, worm damage, soundpost crack and table with patch. Scroll probably later. Dendro report. Rings on the bass side 1672 and 1669 on the treble side. Cross matches with Jacobs, Kleinman, 3 violins by Daniel Parker. Interesting. English and Low Country makers. That is a curious violin actually. Her violin is ascribed to Antonio Bagatella, Pavia, 1774. 1 bid of that, 8,500. It's got a certificate from Dykes and Son, London, 1930. An Italian violin, School of Tedesco, Naples, second half of the 19th century. 1 bid on that, 7,000. That's a cool scroll. A good violin, 2 to 4,000. No bids on that at all. That looks fairly new, really. French violin by Joseph Vautrin, Chaumont, 1933. 2,500. There's 1 bid on that so far. It's a strong varnish. French violin by Charles J.B. Colomazar, Few. Paris 1929, 10 bids on that. There you go. 1900, the Colomazar's really definitely going. Original receipt there, that's pretty cool. Violin probably by Emile Laurent, Brussels 1903, 2 bids on that. An Italian violin by Riccardo Genovese, Lecco 1928, no bids on that. 50 to 60,000 is the estimate. Certificate of Jean-Jacques Rampal, Paris 2016. And an English violin, probably School of Panorma, London circa 1800, after Amati, no bids on that so far. Length of back 355. German violin by A. Fischer Bremen, circa 1900, no bids on that. French violin workshop of Marc Lebert, Mirecourt, circa 1920, no bids on this so far. 357, length back. French violin by Jean-Baptiste Collin, Mirecourt, circa 1910, no bids on that. Good violin, no bids. That's actually an interesting scroll there. Have we missed one there? I'm going a bit mad. No, that's correct. An Italian violin by Joseph Galliano, Naples, circa 1790. 0 bids on that. 120 to 160,000 is the estimate. That's a very nice scroll. Nice colour. Certificate of Moaning and Son. Length of back 356. Sound patch in the sound patch in the table. An Italian violin by Tommaso Evola, Naples, circa 1783. Bids on that were up to 125,000, so 130 to 160. Sold with a certificate of Kenneth Warren and Sons, Chicago, 2008. Violin is in an exceptional state of preservation. Interesting. So the collectors like this kind of stuff. And the ex Cyril Rubin, a fine French violin by Jean-Baptiste Villon, Paris, 1869. 0 bids so far. 150 to 200,000 is the estimate. Violin retains its original neck. Obviously, Villons are super popular these days, but it'd be interesting to see if this sells or not, because it's quite a high starting price. Obviously, the values have shot up recently, so we'll have to see. Sold with the late 19th century fine veneered burr walnut case, probably French. Case was always thought to be from the Villon workshop. The violin was property of Cyril Rubin, who for over 40 years was the first violinist in the London Symphony Orchestra. There you go. Some other stuff about his career there. And I think that's it. We're on the last one now. A very fine and important Italian violin by Giovanni Francesco Presender, Turin, 1834. 2 bids. We're up to 300,000 already. So yeah, very interesting. Length of back 358. That's all right. Hill certificate from 1907. Some other certificates as well. And it's a nice scroll. Nice workmanship. And all this kind of French style that Presender kind of worked in. Certificates there. I mean, I've kind of seen and heard a couple of these Presenders, and they always are really very good. They're quite they sound very good, and they're very popular with players, so I'm not surprised about that there are bids on these. And yeah, anyone that I've ever seen that's kind of played these has always kind of spoke very highly of them. It's a bit of a patch there on the sound post. Overall condition is excellent. So yeah, these are always popular, and I think the value of these is, you know, goes up and up all the time, especially because these are slightly later kind of Italian violins. They in general like in a bit better condition than some of the older ones, so they're always really popular. But yeah, Presender's like very, very interesting maker for sure. Maybe we should listen for a tiny little bit of this. That's probably enough. But yeah, very interesting violin for sure. Presender, definitely very, very, very fine maker. And if you get a chance to look at one, try one, pick one up in person, I definitely recommend it. I think very, very, very nice instruments. So yeah, that's it. We've done it. We've done all 260 lots. That was a very long kind of run through of the auction catalogue. I'm definitely tired now. But very interesting auction actually, and I like the layout and the information. Yeah, some interesting good kind of stuff there. I would have liked to have seen a few more kind of English instruments, like odder, more obscure English instruments, because I do like to see that, and sometimes Bromptons do that. But otherwise we've got our usual sea of Italian instruments, and they've toned down the use of interesting and very interesting a bit, so that's kind of good, because that was getting a bit much. And also we see a lot of new things, as there was a period where they're just getting the same things rehashed. So we've seen that they've been on a journey recently around the world anyway to acquire stuff, so this makes sense why this auction is so big and has so many different things. So yeah, definitely an interesting auction. I'll put a link in the description, check it out and see what you think. A couple of days left to bid. If you're in London, I think there's a viewing on Sunday, and maybe also on Monday, or maybe not, I can't remember, but I think there's viewings coming up very soon, and just check it out and see what you think. So once again, thanks a lot for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Ciao. Many thanks for tuning in to the Musical Instrument Investigator. I hope that you enjoyed the video. If you did, then please like, subscribe and turn on notifications, and watch out for the next video coming soon.